Lana, chained and bruised, smirks at the camera, her eyes glinting with mischief. Narrator, in a suspenseful tone. You think you have control over her, don't you? A simple prisoner. A plaything ... But what if I told you? She's not the one. In chains? The camera zooms in on Lana as she begins to uncoil from the chains with a confident grin. Narrator, she's got a plan. And it's not just to survive. It's to take back everything. And you ... You're just another pawn in her game. Lana's hand brushes against the soldiers, teasing them with a smirk. Sold for meat ... But she won't be your prey. She's here. To flip the script. Cut to a close-up of her face, her lips whispering. Use me. Hold me ... Just get me out of here. A sudden silence. Narrator softly. What happens next will change everything. Don't blink ... You'll miss it. Scene cuts to black. Asterisk. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a world of HFY Sci-Fi stories, where humanity isn't just surviving ... It's thriving. I'm Narrator Speeder, and I'll be your voice for today's tale. Brief pause for effect. You ready for the ultimate showdown? Let's begin the story. Asterisk. Lana's eyes snapped open, her breath shallow, the cold metal of the cell pressing against her back. The silence in the prison was unbearable. The distant hum of the space station echoed faintly, but all she could hear was the sound of her heartbeat, slow and steady. Her body, bruised and broken from the countless battles she had fought, lay limp on the cold floor, but her spirit was anything but defeated. She was no ordinary captive. Lana was humanity's most dangerous weapon, and her situation would soon prove that. She shifted slightly, the chains around her wrists rattling as she tugged at them. She wasn't truly trapped. No one could hold her for long, but for now she waited. There was something satisfying about the silence before the storm, the calm before chaos erupted. She had been through worse, far worse. Her mind raced, calculating the best moment to escape. The soldiers outside her cell didn't know what they were dealing with. They thought they had captured a fragile prisoner, a woman to be used and discarded. But Lana was far from fragile. She was more than just a soldier. She was a symbol of humanity's unbreakable will. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Her heart picked up its pace. This was it. The time had come. She glanced toward the door as it slid open, and there stood Commander Griffin, the leader of the soldiers tasked with overseeing her captivity. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore a stern expression, but his eyes betrayed him. They flickered with curiosity, not fear, not hatred, curiosity. He was intrigued by her, by the challenge she presented. And that was exactly what she wanted. Ready to talk? Griffin's voice was rough, but there was a hint of something else beneath it, something softer, almost tentative. Lana didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let her eyes scan him, slowly, purposefully, as if she were deciding whether or not he was worth her time. Her lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smirk. "Do you really think you can control me?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. "You don't even know what you're dealing with, do you?" She tugged at the chains again, the metal scraping against her skin. She knew he was watching, his gaze locked on her every movement. She wasn't just trying to escape, she was playing him. Griffin stepped forward, his boots thudding softly against the floor. He didn't say a word, but his eyes told a different story. He was unsure, confused. She had caught him off guard. And now he was unsure of what to do next. Lana's gaze never wavered as she met his eyes, her smirk growing wider. "You think you can use me?" she whispered, her voice soft and slow, almost too soft. "But you don't know ... who I really am." She leaned back against the cold wall, the chains clinking lightly as she moved, her body language playful, teasing. Every movement she made seemed to draw him in further, like a moth to a flame. Griffin cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "You're not in a position to make demands, prisoner. You'll speak when I tell you to speak." He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. But Lana wasn't listening. She knew exactly how to get under his skin, how to make him doubt himself, how to make him question his authority. It was a game to her, and she was always 5 steps ahead. With a swift movement, she tilted her head, her hair cascading over her shoulder. "So tell me, Commander, what's it like to think you're in control? To think you've won?" Her words were slow, deliberate, as if she were savoring each one. Griffin's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he tried to suppress the unease she had planted in him. But Lana could see it. She could see it in the way he shifted his weight, the way his fingers twitched. He was nervous now. And that was exactly what she needed. "You won't escape," Griffin finally said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "You can't. There's nowhere to run." Lana's lips parted in a silent laugh. "You think I'm running?" She whispered, her voice like silk. "You really don't know anything about me." She looked up at him, her eyes glinting in the dim light of the cell. For a brief moment, she felt the tension in the air, the weight of the game they were playing. He was just as trapped as she was caught in her web, tangled by his own pride and desire to control. Lana stood up slowly, her chains dragging behind her as she moved with calculated grace. "You'll regret underestimating me, Commander," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You'll regret it more than you know." With that, she pulled her arm back, the chains rattling in a mocking symphony. Griffin didn't move, but the air between them crackled with the electric charge of a predator preparing to strike. Lana knew it was only a matter of time before she made her move. The game was on, and no one, not even Griffin, could predict what would happen next. As she turned away from him, her lips curled into another smile, a hint of victory in her eyes. But before she could make her next move, the doors of the cell slammed shut with a deafening clang. Lana froze, her smile fading. Something was wrong. The sound of footsteps echoed, but they weren't Griffin's. She could hear them, heavy, deliberate, the sound of someone who wasn't supposed to be here. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice sharp with authority. The footsteps stopped, and then, from the shadows, a voice spoke. "You were never meant to be free." Lana's heart raced as the darkness seemed to close in around her. Her body tensed, preparing for what was to come. But who was it? And what did they want from her? The door behind her slammed shut. And she realized for the first time, she might not be the one in control anymore. What happens next? Is Lana truly trapped? Lana's mind raced, but her face remained calm. The footsteps were growing closer, echoing louder as they approached her cell. She could feel the cold metal under her fingertips, the chain still wrapped around her wrists, but she wasn't helpless. Not anymore, not when she had so much left to do. "Who's there?" she asked again, her voice steady, even though inside a storm was brewing. The footsteps stopped, and a shadow fell across the doorway. A tall figure stood just beyond the threshold. At first, she couldn't make out any details, but the silhouette was unmistakable, familiar, yet foreign. She asked, her voice low but filled with the kind of venom that would make any man hesitate. But the figure didn't answer. Instead, it stepped forward, revealing a face that Lana had not expected to see. Her breath caught in her throat. It was another soldier, a man she hadn't seen before. His eyes were cold, calculating, and they locked with hers as he took a step closer. He wore the same uniform as Griffin's men, but there was something about him that made Lana's instincts scream danger. He didn't feel like an ally. "Lana," the man said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. He didn't sound frightened. In fact, he almost sounded amused, like he knew something she didn't. Lana narrowed her eyes, refusing to show any sign of weakness. "Who the hell are you?" she spat, her gaze never leaving his face. The man smiled, his lips curling into a smirk that made Lana's skin crawl. "That's not important," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "What matters is, you're not getting out of here." His words felt like a punch to her gut. The door to her cell was locked, and there were no windows. She had no weapons, and her chains still restricted her movements. But she had been in worse situations before, and she had always found a way out. She wasn't about to let this man stop her. "Let me guess," she said, her voice cool, calculating. "You're here to teach me a lesson. Am I right?" The man chuckled darkly. "Not quite. I'm here to make sure you stay where you are. You're an asset, Lana, a weapon. And weapons don't escape, not without permission." Lana's mind raced, analyzing every word, every movement. He wasn't just another soldier. He was something else. Something darker. "Why don't you just let me go?" she said, her voice suddenly sweet, almost innocent. "You know you want to. You can take me out of here. Keep me for yourself. No one will know." The man raised an eyebrow, a brief flicker of uncertainty passing across his face. For a split second, it seemed like he might actually consider it. But then, the flicker was gone, replaced with a hard edge. "I think you're forgetting your place." "Lana," he said, stepping closer. "You're a prisoner. You don't get to make demands. I do." Lana's eyes narrowed as the man moved closer. She could feel the tension building between them, the air thick with something unspoken. But she wasn't afraid. Not of him. Not anymore. "I don't take orders from anyone," she replied, her voice low and dangerous. For a moment, the man hesitated, as if weighing his next move. Then, before she could react, he took a step back and signaled for someone behind him. Lana's heart skipped a beat. There was another sound: footsteps, but not from the man in front of her. Someone else was here, someone she hadn't expected. Another soldier emerged from the shadows, but this one wasn't a soldier at all. His face was covered, masked in a way that made him look even more menacing. His eyes, though, were cold and unforgiving. His presence made Lana's stomach churn. This was not good. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp, though the fear was creeping in. The masked figure didn't speak. Instead, he held up a small device, the light from it reflecting off his dark armor. "I don't think you understand, Lana," the man said again, his voice colder than before. "You're not going anywhere. Not now, not ever. You're a pawn in a much bigger game." Lana's pulse quickened, her thoughts racing. "What do you mean? Who are you working for?" But before she could get an answer, the lights in her cell flickered, casting the room into darkness for a split second. She squinted, trying to make out what was happening, but everything was moving too fast. The masked soldier stepped forward, his gloved hands reaching for her. Lana didn't have time to think. She moved. With a surge of adrenaline, she yanked her chains, slamming her body against the wall and breaking free for just a moment. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she fought back, but her escape was short-lived. The soldiers were on her in an instant, pulling her back toward the center of the cell. The masked figure grinned, the hint of a cruel smile hidden behind his mask. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" he mocked. Lana struggled, but the grip was too strong. There was no getting out now, not without their help. But she knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. She would find a way to escape. She always did. The man, still holding the device, leaned in close, his voice dripping with menace. "You don't get to choose, Lana," he whispered. "You're a tool, a weapon, and weapons don't get to be free." With a cruel laugh, he activated the device. The world around her shifted, her vision blurring, the air growing colder. Lana's heart pounded in her chest as the last thing she saw before the darkness took over was the smug smile on the masked figure's face. What happened next? And will Lana escape this new nightmare? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Lana's eyes snapped open, but everything around her was dark. She couldn't move, at least not in the way she wanted. Her body felt heavy, like 1,000 chains had wrapped themselves around her, squeezing her chest. The air was thick with The faint scent of metal and old machinery. The flickering lights above her cast strange shadows, making her feel like she was still trapped in that damn cell. But this time, it was different. Her arms were pinned down, and when she tried to move them, she could feel the cool, smooth texture of some kind of metal restraint locking her in place. Panic surged in her chest for a brief moment, but she quickly squashed it. No time for that now. She needed to think. She needed to escape. She pushed herself up, using the strength of her legs to lift her body slightly. Her mind raced as she tried to recall what had happened. The masked soldier. The device. The last thing she remembered was her vision spinning. Her body going limp, the world turning black. A voice broke through the silence. Well, look who's awake. Lana's heart skipped a beat. She knew that voice, gruff, arrogant. Commander Griffin, but this time he didn't sound so confident. His voice was distant, but there was an underlying uncertainty that wasn't there before. Lana's eyes narrowed as she tried to make sense of it. She was no longer in her cell. That much was clear. The cold, sterile walls had been replaced by something more industrial. More dangerous. She looked around. It wasn't a prison. No, it was something worse. Griffin's face appeared in the dim light, standing in front of her, his arms crossed. He was still in his uniform, but there was something different about him now, something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. His confidence seemed to have melted away, replaced by something darker. You. Lana breathed, her voice hoarse, but full of venom. You think you've won? Griffin chuckled darkly. You're not in control. Lana, not anymore. Lana struggled against the restraints, but they didn't budge. She gritted her teeth, fury coursing through her veins. What the hell is this place? She demanded, her voice laced with authority. Griffin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his boots clicking against the cold floor. You're in a facility, he said, his tone much calmer than before. A place where things like you are kept, for good. Lana's eyes flashed with realization. You're not just a soldier, are you? She spat. You're working. For them. For the aliens. Griffin didn't flinch, but the slightest twitch of his lip betrayed him. He knew she was right. He wasn't a simple soldier. He wasn't just trying to stop her. No, this was bigger than that. She was part of something much darker, something that had been planned for a long time. You're nothing but a tool to them, he said, his voice low. Just like the rest of them. Her heart sank. The realization hit her like a cold wave. This wasn't just about surviving. She wasn't just a prisoner. They had plans for her, big plans. Plans she didn't even fully understand yet. But one thing was clear now. She wasn't going to just roll over and let them use her. Not again. You're wrong, she said, her voice steady, defiant. You don't control me. No one does. Griffin's eyes flickered, a glint of something almost resembling doubt crossing his face. But it was gone as quickly as it came. It's not about control, Lana. It's about survival. We're at war. War, Lana echoed, her brow furrowing. What are you talking about? The room seemed to grow colder, the silence stretching between them like a heavy curtain. Griffin stepped back and gestured toward the large windows behind him. Lana's eyes followed, and what she saw sent a chill through her spine. The stars were gone. In their place was a massive fleet of alien ships, sleek, menacing, and floating in the void like giants. Their engines glowed ominously, casting an eerie light across the empty space. The fleet was surrounding a planet that looked familiar. That's Earth, Lana whispered, her heart racing. Griffin nodded slowly. It is, and it's about to fall. The aliens have come, and they're not leaving until they've finished what they started. Lana's mind spun. She had always known humanity was in danger, but she had never imagined this. They were losing. The war, and not just losing. They were about to lose everything. You think we're just going to give up? Lana shot back. You think I'm going to sit here and let you hand Earth over to these monsters? Griffin's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a low growl. That's exactly what you're going to do. You don't have a choice anymore, Lana. You're part of their plan now. Her pulse thudded in her ears. I'll never help you. I'll never help them. Griffin's expression darkened, but before he could respond, a sharp noise cut through the room. A series of alarms blared, the lights flickering wildly. Something was happening, something she couldn't see. Now's your chance. Lana, Griffin said, his voice suddenly urgent. You either join us or you die here. Lana's eyes flickered to the window again. The alien ships were moving. Slowly but with purpose. She could feel the weight of the situation crushing her, the knowledge that Earth's fate rested on her shoulders. Griffin stepped back, giving her space to think. His face was hard, but something about his posture suggested. Even he wasn't entirely certain of what was to come. Lana's mind raced. There was no time to hesitate. No time to play it safe. She had to make a choice. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed open, and she heard the unmistakable sound of boots rushing in. The masked figure, the one who had been with Griffin, was back, and he wasn't alone. The room filled with figures. Tall and threatening, their weapons raised. Lana's heart raced. There was no time left. A split-second decision. Would she join them, or was there another way out? The question burned in her mind. And then the lights went out. Complete darkness. Was it the end for Lana? What happens next? Will she survive or fall into the trap? The silence that followed the blackout felt suffocating. Lana's heart pounded in her chest as her mind raced to process the sudden turn of events. The flickering lights had vanished, leaving only the haunting glow of distant stars through the window. The air in the room seemed to thicken, as if the very atmosphere was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She could hear the heavy footsteps, boots slapping against the cold metal floor, growing closer. Every movement felt magnified. In the pitch darkness, every sound a warning that something or someone was about to strike. Move. Lana didn't need to be told twice. Her instincts kicked in, her body tensing, preparing for whatever came next. She had always been one step ahead of her captors, and this was no different. The dark wasn't her enemy, it was her ally. The restraints on her wrists had been designed to hold her in place, to keep her powerless. But Lana wasn't about to play by anyone's rules. She flexed her fingers, feeling the metal bands loosen slightly with each movement. The more she shifted, the more she realized that the restraints weren't as tight as they had seemed. She pulled harder. The metal snapped. Her heart skipped a beat, but she didn't stop. She had to move now. Without wasting another second, Lana bolted to her feet, stumbling at first as she regained her balance. The room around her was silent, too silent. Where are they? She cursed under her breath, trying to make out shapes in the dark. Her eyes adjusted to the dim glow of the stars outside the window, the shadows of the figures becoming clearer. A movement caught her eye. Something, or someone, darted across the far side of the room. Lana's breath caught in her throat. There was someone else here. She didn't hesitate. With the stealth of a predator, Lana crept toward the source of the movement, her body blending into the darkness. She moved quickly, silently, her mind working faster than ever. She could feel her pulse racing, but her focus was unshakable. As she neared the shadowy figure, she stopped in her tracks. It was him, the masked soldier. His figure was tall and imposing, his body covered in the same sleek black armor. He was watching the door, waiting for something or someone. His back was turned to her, and the soft hum of his breathing was the only sound breaking the stillness. Lana knew she couldn't afford to waste this opportunity. If she took him down, she might be able to escape the facility before they realized what had happened. With a swift, fluid motion, Lana moved behind him, her steps completely silent. She reached for his throat, using the momentum of her movement to slam him into the wall with a crash. The masked soldier struggled, his grip tightening around her wrist, but it was too late. Lana's knee collided with his stomach, and he let out a sharp gasp of air. In a flash, she twisted his arm behind his back, pinning him against the wall. For a moment, they were still, her breathing heavy, his strained. Lana's face was inches from his, her eyes narrowing as she leaned closer. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice low, dangerous. "What is this place? What are you doing to me?" The soldier's breath was ragged, but he didn't answer. Lana tightened her grip, pressing harder against his chest. She could feel the pulse in his neck quicken, and her patience was wearing thin. "Talk," she demanded, her voice now sharp with authority. The soldier's eyes flickered to the door, then back to her. He was afraid of her, or something else, she couldn't tell. Then, with a sudden jerk, he slammed his elbow into her side, knocking her off balance. The shock of the impact made her stagger, but she quickly recovered, spinning to face him again. His hands came up in a defensive gesture, but Lana wasn't waiting. She lashed out, aiming for his throat again. But before she could make contact, the lights flickered back on, blinding her for a split second. It was enough for the soldier to break free. With a fast movement, he twisted out of her grip, and before she could react, a loud alarm blared across the room. Red lights began to flash, casting everything in an ominous hue. "Damn it!" Lana cursed again, but she didn't let the panic set in. She had to act fast. The soldier stepped back, his hand reaching for something at his waist. A weapon. In one fluid motion, Lana launched herself forward, knocking the soldier's weapon from his hand before he could draw it. The two of them struggled on the floor, each trying to overpower the other, but it was clear that Lana had the advantage. She was stronger, faster, more desperate. And she had been trained for this. With one final twist, she pinned the soldier to the ground, her knee pressing into his chest. His breathing was shallow, but he was still alive barely. Lana leaned in, her voice a whisper of deadly intent. "You were going to tell me everything," she said, her words icy, calculated. "And now you're going to..." The soldier's lips twitched into something like a smirk, but it was short-lived. "You're just a pawn," he gasped. "You're playing their game, and you don't even know it." Lana's heart froze. Playing their game? She shook her head, pushing him off her with a force that sent him sprawling to the floor. "Whose game? What are you talking about?" But before she could get an answer, the door slammed open with a violent force, and several armed guards poured in. The soldier on the floor reached for his weapon, but Lana was already on her feet, her back to the wall. She had only one option. Run. With a burst of speed, she darted past the guards, her heart racing, the pounding of her feet deafening in her ears. She didn't look back. She couldn't afford to, but as she rounded the corner, she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A massive, heavily armored door, and beyond it freedom. But was it freedom? Or was it another trap? What will Lana do next? Is the escape a lie? Lana's legs carried her toward the massive door, the sound of heavy boots echoing behind her. The guards were gaining ground, their voices a blur of commands as they shouted for reinforcements. But Lana didn't stop. She couldn't. She could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her, the knowledge that every second spent running was a chance to change everything. The massive door loomed ahead, a stark metal barrier that promised freedom. But even as she ran, a nagging feeling settled in the pit of her stomach. It was too easy. The door opened effortlessly as she approached, its automated system recognizing her proximity. She didn't hesitate. She darted through the gap before it could close, her body a blur of motion. On the other side, the hallway stretched out into darkness, lit only by the occasional flicker of a dying light. The sound of footsteps, still chasing her, reverberated in the narrow space. But for now, She was free, at least temporarily. She took a deep breath, gathering her bearings. For a brief moment, everything was quiet, except for the distant hum of the ship's machinery. She could hear her own heartbeat, steady and controlled. As her mind raced to figure out her next move, the hallway ahead split into two directions, one leading to what appeared to be an elevator shaft, the other to a stairwell. She paused for a fraction of a second, debating which path to take. The sound of the guard's footsteps was growing louder. Go up. Lana's instincts screamed at her to take the stairs. Higher ground was always the best place to escape. She sprinted towards the stairs, pushing her body harder than she ever had before. Every step felt like it was taking everything out of her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The sharp sound of gunfire rang out in the distance, and a bullet whizzed past her ear, narrowly missing her. Her heart skipped a beat, adrenaline surging through her veins. She could feel the heat of the shot, could hear the whine of it cutting through the air. Close. Too close. She ducked, dropping to the ground as another shot rang out, hitting the wall just inches from her. Lana gritted her teeth and pushed herself back to her feet, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She didn't have time to waste. The elevator was her only chance now. She turned back down the hallway, moving at a sprint, her boots slamming against the metal floor. The guards were getting closer, their shouts reverberating through the narrow corridor. She could feel their eyes on her, hear the pounding of their boots closing, and just ahead, the elevator doors loomed. She hit the button without hesitation, praying that she wasn't too late. The doors slid open with a hiss, and she darted inside, slamming the button for the highest floor before the doors could close. The elevator shot up, the hum of the machinery filling the small compartment as she leaned against the back wall, trying to catch her breath. The weight of the situation crashed down on her in that moment. What was she doing? Where was she even going? She couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, they would catch up to her. And when they did, they would make sure she never left. She had no choice but to find a way out. The elevator slowed, and her heart dropped into her stomach. A loud ding echoed in the silence as the doors slid open again. Lana's eyes widened as she stepped out into a dark, unfamiliar hallway. It was eerily quiet here, too quiet. She moved cautiously, her every step measured. There was something off about this place. The lights overhead flickered like they hadn't been maintained in years. The walls were streaked with rust, the air stale and heavy with a faint smell of decay. This wasn't a regular part of the station. This was a forgotten part. A place meant to stay hidden. Lana's fingers grazed the cold metal walls as she moved deeper into the corridor. She had no idea where she was or how she had ended up here, but one thing was clear. This wasn't part of the plan. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, and Lana froze. "You shouldn't be here." She whipped around, her pulse spiking. A man stood at the far end of the hallway, his face partially obscured by shadows. He was tall, with a lean, muscular build, his hands resting at his sides. His uniform was different from the soldiers who had been chasing her, though it still bore the insignia of the forces that controlled this station. "I don't have time for this," Lana shot back, her voice sharp. "Get out of my way." The man didn't move. Instead, he studied her, his eyes narrow, calculating. "You're not the one they want," he said, his tone strange. "You're not even the real target. You're just a piece in a much bigger game." Lana's mind raced. "What do you mean? Who's the target?" she demanded. "Who are you?" The man took a step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "You've been played, Lana. All of this. It's all part of something much bigger than you realize. You're nothing more than a distraction." Her breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" But before he could answer, a loud sound echoed from the far end of the hallway. Footsteps. Lots of them. Lana's pulse quickened as she turned to face the oncoming threat. The guards were closing in. But there was no way out. The hallway was a dead-end dot. The man reached out, his hand resting lightly on her arm. "You need to make a choice," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Join them, or join us. There's no middle ground." Her eyes darted between him and the approaching soldiers. What was he offering? Lana's mind was spinning, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But there was no time left. She had to act. The choice was hers. Will Lana join the unknown man or fight her way out on her own? Lana's breath quickened as the footsteps echoed louder, growing nearer with each passing second. The man's hand still rested on her arm, his grip firm but strangely calm. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her stomach churn. He wasn't a soldier, not like the others. He wasn't part of the system she had been fighting against. But what was he? Who was he? Join them, or join us? The words reverberated in her mind, the weight of the decision hanging heavy in the air. Time was running out. The guards would be on her in moments, and the man standing before her offered only two paths, neither of which she fully understood. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice low but edged with desperation. She needed more answers. She needed something to grasp, some kind of truth to hold onto in the midst of this chaos. The man's lips curled into a slight smirk, but it was not comforting. He was playing a game, just like everyone else. And Lana hated games. "I'm someone who knows what's coming," he replied cryptically, his voice tinged with a mix of amusement and something darker. "And I know you're running out of time." The footsteps grew louder. She could feel the vibrations in the floor, the soldiers' boots moving in rhythm, marching toward her like a deadly countdown. Lana looked down the hall. There was no way out. "Answer me," she hissed. "Who are you?" The man's gaze softened for a moment, as if weighing her words, before he spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "You're not supposed to be here, Lana," he said. "The people you're fighting against, they have a plan. A bigger one. And you're not even part of it. You're just a pawn in their game, one they'll throw away when they're done with you." Lana's blood ran cold. A pawn. She had always known that she wasn't truly free. None of them were. But to hear it spoken out loud by someone who seemed to know far more than she did, it made her feel small, insignificant, like a piece of a larger puzzle she wasn't meant to solve. She had always been in control, always ahead of the game. But now, her certainty was slipping, unraveling like the thread of a worn-out tapestry. "I don't need your pity," Lana snapped, shaking him off. "I can handle myself." The man stepped back, his expression unreadable. The guards were almost upon them. Lana's muscles tensed as she considered her options. She could try to fight her way out. She could keep running. But the thought of being cornered in a place like this, of facing an enemy she didn't fully understand, made her stomach churn with dread. The man's gaze never left her. "You're strong, Lana. I'll give you that. But you're not invincible. You don't even know what you're up against." Her mind whirled. Could she trust him? Could she afford not to? There was a split-second decision. The sound of the soldier's boots was deafening now. She had to choose. The man moved quickly, his hand darting to his waist as he produced a sleek black device. He pressed it to the wall, and with a hiss, a hidden doorway slid open, revealing a small, dimly lit corridor behind it. Lana hesitated only for a moment. The guards would be here any second. She could see them rounding the corner now, their weapons drawn. There was no time left. Without another word, she bolted through the door the man had opened, ducking low as she entered the narrow passage. The door slammed shut behind her, and for a moment, she was shrouded in complete darkness. The only sound was the thumping of her heart in her chest, the quiet echo of her breaths. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. The corridor twisted and turned, the lights overhead flickering intermittently, casting long shadows along the walls. She could hear the man's footsteps behind her, but she didn't dare look back. The sound of the guards was growing fainter, and she couldn't afford to let her guard down. They were after her. They were always after her. And now, this man, this mystery, had thrown her into something far bigger than herself. She couldn't help but wonder, was he really trying to help her? Or was this just another trap? Finally, the hallway opened into a larger room, the ceiling high above her. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the new surroundings. The room was eerily quiet, save for the hum of machinery somewhere far off. It looked like some kind of control. Center monitors, buttons, screens lined the walls. But the place was abandoned. Old, dusty, forgotten. "You made it this far." The man's voice came from behind her, startling her for a moment. He stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the surroundings with a sense of familiarity. But this is where it gets difficult. Lana turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. Difficult? How much worse can it get? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he motioned toward the monitors. "You think you're the only one they've been tracking? You think you're the only one with a target on your back?" Lana's stomach dropped as she followed his gaze. The screens on the wall flickered to life, displaying images of her escape, of her time on the station. Every moment recorded. Every movement tracked. "They've been watching you all along," the man said quietly. "And they're about to make their move." A chill ran down her spine. The entire time. Everything she thought she was controlling, everything she thought she had been escaping, was a lie. She was still just a pawn, and the real game was just beginning. Lana didn't have time to process it all. The door behind them exploded open with a deafening crash, and the sound of soldiers flooding into the room filled the air. Lana's heart raced. She spun to face the man, her eyes wild. "Now what?" she demanded. The man's lips curled into a grim smile. "Now you choose. Will Lana finally take control of her fate, or will the game consume her? Comment your thoughts below. The sound of boots pounding against the floor grew louder, filling the room with a sense of impending doom. Lana's pulse thundered in her ears as she turned to face the man, desperation creeping into her voice. "What now?" she demanded again, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to stay calm. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gave her a measured look, his eyes hardening as the soldiers drew closer. They were fast, closing in on them, weapons raised. It was only a matter of seconds before they reached the control room. Lana's heart beat faster, and the sense of claustrophobia that had been creeping up on her suddenly overtook her completely. She was running out of options, running out of time. The man stepped forward, his hand moving quickly to a console on the wall. A series of lights blinked rapidly, and a quiet hum filled the room as a hidden panel slid open, revealing a small high-tech device. "Take this," he said, his voice cold and determined. "It's your only shot." Lana's eyes darted between the device and the oncoming soldiers. "What is it?" "Something that can keep you alive long enough to make it out," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of a secret. "You don't have much time." Lana hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run, to fight, to do anything other than stand still and accept whatever was in his hands. But she could see the truth in his eyes. The soldiers were almost there, and if she didn't act now, she would be caught. She grabbed the device without another word. It was small, compact, and heavy in her palm, like it had the weight of the world in it. She didn't question him further. There wasn't time. "What's the plan?" she asked, her voice tight. The man didn't waste any time. "You need to get out of here now. There's a transport ship waiting for you at the far dock. It's your only way off this station." Lana took a step toward the door, but the man grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "You don't understand. They're not just after you. They're after everything. You're part of their experiment, Lana. You have no idea what's coming." His words hit her like a slap to the face, and for a brief moment, Her world seemed to freeze. "What experiment?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" The man's eyes flashed, his lips tightening. "The aliens, the ones controlling this place, they've been studying humanity. And you, Lana, are their greatest success. Or their biggest failure. Either way, you're not the last one they'll come after." Lana felt the walls close in on her. "I didn't sign up for this," she yelled, pulling away from him. "You're just trying to play me like all the others." But the man's face remained impassive, the urgency in his eyes not letting up. "I'm trying to help you," he said, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "And you don't have much time to decide. Either you leave now, or you stay and let them finish what they started." The sound of the soldiers was deafening now, their boots echoing in the hallway just outside the door. Lana's chest tightened as she thought of all the ways this could go wrong, of the many traps she had already fallen into. But she couldn't give up now. She had come too far, her eyes locked with his. "You have one chance to prove you're not lying. What's really going on here?" He stared back at her for a long, tense moment. Finally, he spoke again, his words coming slowly, carefully. "They're going to use you to control humanity. You think they're just taking prisoners, but what they really want is control over the human race. And you're the key to it all." Lana felt her blood run cold. Control. That word kept coming up, and every time it did, it reminded her how little power she actually had. How little she truly understood about the forces pulling the strings. But there was one thing she was sure of: no one was going to control her. Not if she had anything to say about it. The door to the control room suddenly burst open, and armed soldiers stormed in, their guns raised. Lana's heart raced as she looked around for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped. The man stepped in front of her, blocking her from the soldiers. His hand was on the device, and in an instant, the air around them shifted, becoming charged with tension. The soldiers hesitated, but only for a moment. Then one of them stepped forward, his gun aimed directly at Lana. "No!" the man shouted, his voice sharp. He pressed a button on the device, and the room seemed to crackle with electricity. A blinding light erupted from it, flashing so bright that Lana had to shield her eyes. When the light cleared, the soldiers were on the floor, unconscious, their weapons scattered around them. The man turned back to Lana, his expression unreadable. "Go, now." Lana didn't need another invitation. She ran, her heart pounding, her thoughts a whirlwind. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. She could hear the shouts of the remaining soldiers behind her. But she didn't dare look back. She rounded corners, darted through hallways, and pushed herself harder than ever before. She had no idea where the transport ship was, or even if it was still waiting for her, but she couldn't let fear stop her. Finally, she burst through the final set of doors, and there, in the distance, she saw it. The transport ship. It was her. Last chance. Lana's legs burned, but she pushed forward, her body moving on pure adrenaline. The ship was almost within reach. Almost. But then, a familiar voice shouted from behind her, "Lana!" She turned, her heart in her throat. The man was there, standing at the doorway, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Welcome to the real war," he said. Before she could respond, the doors to the transport ship slid open, and Lana stepped inside, leaving the man and everything she thought she knew behind. Was this the end? Or just the beginning of something far worse?